Hello, 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 and welcome to another SCOUTCAST brought to you by Fantasy Football Scout. As always, you're joined by me, Andy, FPL Mode, and we are also joined by the Red Arrow Hibbo. How's it going, Hibbo?
Good. I wish my arrow was green, but still happy enough for my start. But no, it was a fairly feisty weekend of football. We had Man City against Arsenal on Sunday, which kind of set the tone for the weekend. And it was a bit of a swingy week in fantasy as well. And we're starting to see some kind of cracks in the community.
Yeah.
People that have went no Haaland are maybe starting to feel the pressure. So I think this week we're going to look at wildcard drafts. And on the SCOUTCAST, we'll be your oasis of calm as we guide you through the wildcard drafts for game week 6 and beyond here.
Oh, I like it. And I mean, I wish I was on a green arrow as well. But the person who makes these screens, Tom, put me as a red arrow, even though I was on a green arrow this week. So he's just trolling me every week at the moment. It's disgusting. And speaking of wildcards, Nacho, you're our wildcard, aren't you? But you might not be on wildcard this week. How's your week gone?
Yeah, it was good. Good weekend. Woke up a bit like sore today with a bit of a bad back and just realised why looking at the scores today in terms of it. So carrying you boys this week, as we can see.
Your cheeks must be hurting because this is the most you've smiled on a SCOUTCAST so far.
I told you, the first few weeks I'll let you boys just have your glory, and then I'm back now. So yeah.
That sounded good until last week when you finally looked defeated and you were like, yeah, this isn't happening. Now,
I was washed up last week, but I'm back, baby. I'm back. But all in all, good. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to this one because I feel like it's a pretty big week for FPL going into it with a lot of wildcards active. So we got a lot to touch on.
Well, normally, so for anybody that doesn't know, we have a group chat on WhatsApp so we can all chat during the game weeks and stuff. Normally, and Hibbo can attest to this, we don't hear from Nacho. This season, haven't heard anything from him, literally, apart from, FPL's rubbish, all this stuff. This week, he has not stopped. Every single day, it's like, look how many points I got this week, lads. Look how many points. It's disgusting, Nacho. But yeah, you deserve it, mate. It's been a great week, and we'll look at our points in a second. So we are going to be looking at our points in a bit. We're going to be looking at the usual tables we look at. So we're going to be looking at X assists so far for the season. Going to be looking at XGI because there's some interesting players that have started to creep onto those tables. We're going to be looking at fixtures. I have made a little spreadsheet for a bit of a wildcard shortlist. So any players that we're considering putting in our wildcard. So we're going to be discussing that, which I think would be quite a good look. Then we're going to be looking at our wildcard draft. So make sure you stay to the end because we'll be looking at our wildcard drafts. Nacho has one, but he doesn't necessarily know whether he's going to be doing his wildcard yet, so we'll see. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Hibbo will call it amateur hour at the end there. And then we've got the community team who have had a very good week. The very good week, which we don't talk about too much. And then we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A at the end. So let's start with our points. My week was actually going quite well until a certain Forest midfielder got himself sent off. So I finished on 66. I had a green arrow for 1.5 million to 1.3 million. Had Henderson in goal. He finally came good against my own team. Typical. We looked really good, just couldn't score. Robinson with 2, Trent with 11 and Gavardio with 1. Finally, Trent got a little bit of an assist and some bonus points. Smith Rowe with 8 and Rodgers with 10. Whose bonus points swapped really late, where Smith Rowe lost 1 and Rodgers gained 1, but I owned both, so I saw no benefit to that. Gibbs White got me -1. I was sat there watching the game, and I got so excited when they got the penalty, and thought Gibbs White would take it. Wood took it, so Gibbs White didn't get any points, and then Gibbs White got sent off. So I ended up with -1 from Gibbs White, which, kind of stopped me getting the 69, giggity, this week, which is a bit of a shame. Salah with 12 as my captain. Disappointed there. 3-0 win. He only got an assist. It was all about Diaz this week. Muniz, bit of jam for me. Jota didn't play, so Muniz came in for 4 points. Pedro with 1. Oof. Pedro, what a signing he's been for me. And then Haaland with 9. So still should have stuck with Haaland. First week I didn't have Haaland as captain, and he's still got 9 points. 66, green arrow, even though it doesn't say it on the screen. I would take that. And the biggest thing was that I didn't make a move. So I was really worried about Jota. I was worried about Pedro, and I was worried about Muniz. None of them started. But I didn't make a transfer, which I'm really glad at, because I would have done something like Muniz to Vardy, and I would have lost out and also lost a transfer. So actually, I'm very, very happy that I saved my transfer, which means after the wildcard, which I've already played, I'm going to have my 2 free transfers, which feels very, very nice. So I'm very glad that I did that because I was extremely tempted to do something, especially being worried about those 3 players. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Hibbo, on to you, my man. Lowest scorer this week. What's going on?
Just enjoy it while it lasts, boys. So 63 points for me. So it was another red arrow, but I think if the FPL gods had offered me 100k after 5 game weeks, I would have bitten their hand off. So just to go through my team from back to front. So I had Henderson in goal, 9-pointer, absolute hero. The backline had Trent's 11 points, Konza's 9 points, but then I had 2 from Porro and a 0 from Dunk. So those 2 were a bit of a letdown. In midfield, I had Salah's 12 points as captain. Matoma's 5. He got an assist against Forest. And Eze's 3. I don't know how Eze didn't score at least 1. Jeez, he should have scored twice. I gave 2 very, very good chances. And then up top, I had Haaland. It's just customary for Haaland to score points. 9 points. Isaac's 2 and Pedro's 1. So my issue going into the game week was my forwards. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. A bit like you, Andy. I decided to do nothing, so I rolled the transfer. I benched the ESR, Smith Rowe. So I could have been a bit cuter with my play within my team and maybe made a decision around minutes and said, look, I'm going to drop, say, João Pedro out.
Yeah.
I had confidence that both were maybe going to start. And I didn't really want to go down this week the DCL route or the Vardy route. Solanke or Watkins would have paid off, but I just decided I was going to hold. And a bit similar to yourself, after a wildcard, I'll have 3 transfers. So, no, nice. All in all, not a great week, but I'm happy with where I am. You know.
Yeah. No, I think you should be happy, especially wildcarding and 3 free transfers. If you could have said that being at 100k, I think you'd be extremely happy with that. I just take being in the top million at the moment, to be perfectly honest. Callum, let's have a look at your points. Mr. Nacho, looking good this week, 75 points.
Yeah, I've got to enjoy it while it lasts. Honestly,
so proud of you. Enjoy it. Just feel like a proud dad.
Imagine not being in the top 100, top million. Just imagine. Anyway, so 75 points for the team. I done one free transfer.
Moving on.
Just got to get it in there because they happened again. So, 75 points. 1 free transfer that I made was Alexander Isak to Watkins, just with the doubts about Isak was enough, and my bench was just absolutely woeful. So I had to end up bringing Watkins in. So 75 points. Henderson, also the 9-pointers we've spoken about, was just absolute gold in this game week. Robinson with the 2-pointer. Trent and Robertson as my Liverpool double defence really came in with that 11-pointer, but could have easily been a Trent own goal at one point if it wasn't Keller has saved. So really could have been a massive swing there, to be honest with you, on both of those players that I had. So thankfully that didn't happen. And Hall came in as an auto sub for Diogo Jota, who didn't feature. Saka with a 4-pointer, Eze with the 3, and then Smith Rowe and Rodgers really being the big players this week, coming in clutch. And then Haaland with the 9-pointer, Watkins with the captaincy, 6 doubled to 12. So team's all right, but obviously I have a lot of minutes risks in this team right now.
Yeah, the team's looking good. I think a lot of your moves that you made in the past couple of weeks have kind of come off this week, which is like nice. Like you said, the double Liverpool defence, which is quite nice there. Watkins, I thought that was a really good move from you, captaining Watkins. I thought that was quite nice, actually. Obviously, Haaland still beat him, but I think a lot of people went with Salah, so you kind of equalled Salah there. But yeah, it's nice. Shane Muniz obviously didn't come off the bench for you.
Yeah, I changed that last minute.
Yeah.
Last minute. I don't know why. I just thought Hall might start and maybe get something from it, but pretty one of those. I wasn't expecting Jota to get 0 minutes altogether. I was expecting him to at least get 30 when we heard the rumours.
Yeah, 100%. No, lovely stuff. 75 points into the top million, mate. Your season starts now. Mine will start soon. Right, let's have a look at the XA table so far then. So obviously we've been doing these every week and Hibbo very kindly sets it up for us. So thank you very much, my man. Let's have a look. So at the top is still Cole Palmer with 2.21 XA so far accumulated this season. Dwight McNeil in second. Might see him in a few wildcard drafts a little bit later. Mo Salah in third. Morgan Rogers zoomed on up this table. He's now in fourth. Son in fifth. Semenyo in sixth. Really interesting that some of these players have really nice fixtures coming up as well. So we're going to be talking about quite a few of these for our wildcards. Bernardo Silva. Trent is up here as well. De Bruyne, Saka, Traore, Mbumo, Bruno Fernandes, James Maddison, who I think now has he's up there in terms of XGI this season. We're going to see that in a second as well. And then Jared Bowen. Hibbo, if I go to you first, mate, who here kind of sticks out for you in terms of they're obviously creating the chances, and who is it you're thinking we could probably invest in moving forward? Because McNeil, Rodgers, Semenyo, there are some really cheap options here.
Yeah, for sure. And look, just a bit of a shout out first for the Fantasy Football Scout members area, because this data is from Statsbomb, but it's hosted on our members area, so you can always go on and look at the data on there. I think somebody that's catching the eye for me is kind of Morgan Rodgers. Like, I think my respect should be as loud as my slander, because it hasn't been great in recent weeks from me. And I've kind of opposed Morgan Rodgers, and he'd blanked for 4 weeks, and it was all looking rosy in the garden until he got the 2 assists and three bonus points. So now he's starting to show the underlying data. He's showing the minutes. My kind of doubts long term on Rodgers were, is he going to keep his place? Yeah. Are we going to see the underlying data? Are we going to see the minutes? And like, he's sitting here fourth for Statsbomb XA with 1.97. So he's just behind like a Palmer, and he's behind like a Salah. Like, he only has 9 key passes, but that goes to show what he's producing. You know, so he's producing in kind of key areas, and now he's got Watkins back playing upside along with him.
Yeah.
Previously, we were talking about Watkins as maybe, is he carrying an injury? Is he a 60-minute player? Those doubts have kind of gone from Watkins now. So we're going to see maybe Rodgers playing in tandem with him. Mm-hmm. And like Duran's coming on in games where Watkins isn't coming off. So Rodgers potentially has 2 players that he's going to be supplying there. So I think it's Morgan Rodgers' season, and he's a lock in my wildcard, I think, now.
Well, Nacho, talk about Morgan Rodgers then. If he hadn't have just got 2 assists, would he be on any wildcards this week? Because I feel like he is the player people would have got rid of. He's now got 2 assists, one of them fortuitous, you would say as well. I don't think he'd be on any. Everybody would be like, 5 weeks, he's done nothing, get rid. But 90-minute man, the underlying numbers weren't bad. Talk us through it. Do you think he is somebody to keep on wildcard? Because people are going to have to be deciding between Semenyo, Rodgers, McNeil, Smith Rowe. Do you think he's somebody we should be keeping?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like, when we look at fantasy, like, we all like looking at underlying numbers, and we do like to reward kind of like loyalty to those players that still tick over. But end of the day, outcome does mean something, and actually having FPL points does slightly alter our thinking a little bit. So those 2 assists absolutely have had an impact on our decision, almost going from maybe a little bit of a peripheral wildcard pick to now probably a lock in most people's game week 6 wildcard teams. So I think, again, it's all about how you view FPL. Some people just want points and look back at previous weeks. I think for me, the way I look at it, very simple. Playing 90 minutes. He's clearly the guy right now for Unai Emery outside of Ollie Watkins. I think he can play on the left-hand side. He can play in the 10, dual forward. So when he's playing in a top team right now, a Villa team who recruited so well with their midfield, I think they're just going to keep ticking over really well. And at his price point, I just don't think we need to overthink it right now. I just think we're getting a super cheap player in a top team right now, and a manager who is able to actually manage both European competitions and Premier League historically, domestic league. So I think right now it's just a recipe for a top pick, and it will continue to be, even though I don't think he will hit the absolute highs that he has done in game week 5 each and every week.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I still love him. I know Hibbo was just saying there about he's kind of erred on the side of caution with Rodgers, whereas I was always quite bullish on him at the beginning and thought there's going to be a week where he does well. Like, he's been doing it midweek in Europe. He's been doing it for England. There's obviously a really good player in there. It's just kind of, I suppose, tempering expectations with him. But one person, Hibbo, I was going to ask you about was Semenyo. We've talked about him quite a bit already. What I love about him is he's putting up the underlying numbers, but they've had a really tough start. Now he's got some nice fixtures. He's got Southampton this week. Even if you're not on wildcard, if you needed to free up some money, Semenyo must be right up there in terms of he's got 2 nice fixtures and he's putting up the numbers, and now he's got 2 nice fixtures. What do you think?
Yeah, well, he obviously has Southampton and Leicester in the next 2, and he's been a Scoutcast favourite so far this season, and particularly because of these data tables. He was subbed off in the last game around 69-minute mark, but overall his minutes have been very strong, and like, that's one of the key things I think we're looking for. If we're looking at somebody in around 5.5, are they playing, and are they playing enough? He is. And I think if we're looking at his kind of, if I look at his XGI, I think it's second only to Haaland And I know we'll come to XGI. It's second only on the Haaland. And if we look at his combined shots and key passes, I think only Eze and De Bruyne have done more over the first 5 game weeks. Small sample, 100% granted. But what I would say about Semenyo was he's going to be a super hot differential. He's going to be very low owned. So why not roll the dice against Southampton? You know, like everybody's looking for that low owned haul. So maybe he's the player for the next 2 weeks. I'll definitely have him, I think, on Wildcard.
Yeah, I really like him. I've liked him from the beginning. I thought that he was going to do well this season. I think, well, obviously we didn't know if Anelson was going to be coming in, but I think he's such a good player. We've mentioned the XGI tables a few times already, so I'm just going to bring them up now. So this is the combined goals and assists, expected goals and assists so far this season. Erling Haaland's at the top there. It's just ridiculous how many goals he's scoring already. Scored again at the weekend against Arsenal. 4.56 XGI he's put up so far this season. Semenyo is just behind him on 4.1, and then Salah 4.06. Then below 4 million, we've got Luis Diaz, we've got Nicholas Jackson, Nacho's hero. We've got Cole Palmer just behind him as well with Morgan Rogers, Ollie Watkins, Son, Tavernier, Bruno Fernandes and Bumo, Wissa, Saka and De Bruyne rounding off the table there. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking a lot of people, Nacho, are probably going to be ditching Salah to free up funds elsewhere. We all thought at the beginning of the season that Jota would be the man to cover Salah. Now, it's looking like Luis Diaz is the man that's going to cover Salah and has been doing better than that. He's probably been outperforming Salah. Do you think that's going to continue? Because we were seeing a lot of stuff from Slot saying, actually, he was expecting Gakpo to play instead of Diaz. Like, he's actually come out and saying, we're going to be rotating these boys. Keeping Diaz now, if you're on Wildcard, is that a bit of a fool's game? Or do you think, no, he's in form, keep him, he's going to play?
Yeah, I think it's probably exactly what you said there. I think sometimes we can overthink FPL sometimes. And when a guy is just on form right now, and the big thing about Luis Diaz is, he's having so many shots in the box. He isn't one of those players who's actually having long-range shots. So all of his chances are coming within that box. So that's the first thing. He's getting into some great areas. And in terms of the rotation side of things, I think all three are going to be at risk at times. I mean, Mo Salah isn't a young'un anymore. So with the integration of the Champions League and everything, we could even see slowly but surely an impact on Mo Salah's minutes that we've already seen on both Jota and Diaz. I don't think it'll be to the extent of the two that I mentioned. I think Mo Salah will always remain that ever-present in that Liverpool team. But if Diaz continues the way he is, I know we're talking about Gakpo coming into this team, but end of the day, Slot wants to be consistent in the Premier League and he has to play his best players. So I think right now, not including Diaz in a wild card is probably just a classic case of overthinking it a little bit. I think the numbers that he's put up is fantastic. Can he cover Mo Salah over the course of the season? I still think the cream rises to the top with Mo Salah eventually, but with the price difference right now, I think we can probably, after 5 game weeks, sit here and say quite comfortably we can select Luis Diaz over Mo Salah just because of that 5 million price difference based on what we've seen so far. And I think it is probably logical to go without Salah, have Diaz as that cheaper option and invest the money elsewhere in your team, because right now, look at these numbers. It's just impossible to go without Erling Haaland, I think, unless you are brave, personally.
It's really interesting you said that about Diaz, about overthinking, because I haven't had him in my wildcard drafts. And it's,
oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, I know. And it's literally just because of budget. And he would be that kind of, because I'm really, obviously giving away a few little bits here, but I really want Saka and Palmer on my wildcard. And it means that Diaz isn't there. And because I need Mbumo as well. And all of a sudden it's like, I just can't afford him. But if you were looking at somebody like me and I'm thinking, I don't know whether I can get him in, do you think you're saying you need to get him in? Or do you think you can go without him?
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good point, actually. So I'm probably not saying that like Luis Diaz is essential, because I do think obviously with fantasy there are different components. Going for a Palmer allows you to have double premium, which allows you to pivot. There's so many different variables that we need to consider. But I do think if you're looking at Liverpool and you're saying to yourself, I do not want to go without them, then I think Luis Diaz is absolutely the play to go for. But very difficult to compare a Diaz with a Cole Palmer, because obviously Palmer in himself offers many different traits that Diaz doesn't have. For example, Palmer isn't going to be a rotation risk with European football because he hasn't been selected for the Conference League. So that's a big factor as well. And again, I think saying Diaz is essential is probably the wrong word here. I think probably if you're looking to invest in Liverpool, he would be right up there as my top pick.
No, that's fair. And talking about Palmer's teammate there as well, Hibbo, Nicholas Jackson. Simple question. Is he the best second striker you can pick in your team at the moment?
I'm not going to pick him, is the answer, but he's certainly been flying on the radar, I think, in the content scene. Do you know, like in FPL content creators, we kind of focus on certain players, do you not think, on the whole? And he's one that's kind of flown under the radar a bit. Now, if we look at his goal contributions over the first 5 game weeks, he has 6.
Yeah.
But I think only Haaland and Salah have more. And like last season, in terms of his underlying numbers and stuff like that, he was one of my favourites because he was doing the XG, but he wasn't doing the G.
Yeah.
And then as the season drew to an end, he shaved his head. He became Skinhead Jackson. He started scoring. He's 5th best here for XGI. And he looks as if there's promise here. And he's, 7.7 million?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't rule him out as an option. He isn't in my draft at the minute, but I wouldn't put you off him if you put it that way.
Who would you be picking ahead of him?
We'll see when we come to my wildcard.
Oh, don't you do that? That's cheating. No, I'm looking at Nicholas Jackson and I'm just thinking it just seems an easy pick. Like, you know, he's doing it at the moment. He's got the fixtures. He's got the team behind him that's creating for him. I don't see many players. And Hibbo, you might, Nacho, you might correct me here. Don't see many players that are going to play ahead of him in this Chelsea team.
No, I think the big thing, of course, is Maresca coming out. And the one thing I will say about Maresca, which he's done a brilliant job of, is whereas before with Chelsea managers, it's just kind of been a case of getting the best players in at all costs. I think Maresca's come out and really clearly stated the players for their positions. And he has directly come out and said that Nkunku is in direct competition for Nicholas Jackson. Mm-hmm. And we need to remember that this is a guy who, I know he's had his injury problems, but previous to his transfer to Chelsea, was one of the most sought after players in the world at a time. And we just seen him score a hat-trick tonight. I know it's against Barrow, so it's not really anything to shout about. But I will just say that I think Nkunku will have his time to shine at some point in this Chelsea team. And all it takes is a little bit of a drop-off from Nicholas Jackson. And I think those minutes start to come down to 60 minutes per game. And Nkunku is obviously going to be a fantastic alternative in that Chelsea team. So Jackson's great, but his minutes are going to be at risk with someone like Nkunku, his quality to come on.
I swear every week on here, Nacho, it's either we're back for Chelsea or we're done for Chelsea.
Welcome to Chelsea.
Yeah, exactly. At least better than United, mate. We've been done for ages. Right, let's just have a quick look at the fixtures before we go on to our wildcard shortlist and we can start talking in a bit more detail. So as you can see here, this is the next 7 weeks. And I've done 7 weeks because a lot of people are on wildcard and they need to think a bit more medium to long term. We got Everton at the top, Crystal Palace, Newcastle at home, Fulham at home, Brentford at home with 2 promoted sides away, Ipswich and Southampton. Brentford a second, hence why we're talking about Mbumo being quite a smash pick at the moment. Ipswich in third. They've been top 3 in this fixture ticker for quite a while. Man United are in 4th, interestingly. Then City, West Ham. Not that you're going to be touching many West Ham players at the moment. Leicester, Liverpool, Crystal Palace. Right at the bottom there, Brighton, Newcastle, Southampton and Chelsea are right close to the bottom as well, along with Bournemouth. But obviously Bournemouth and Chelsea, it's very worth saying that game week 6 and 7, the fixtures are pretty good. So Chelsea have Brighton and then Forest at home. Bournemouth have Southampton at home and then Leicester away. But then it doesn't look quite so nice. But just looking at this then, Hibbo, anything here kind of strike you as things are changing? Everton obviously at the top there. Is it a bit of a fool's game going with any Everton players at the moment?
No, well, I think they have a couple of cheap options. I probably, given the current state of play, I don't think I would back them defensively. But if we're looking at, say, the midfield budget option, like McNeil, he shows up in our data tables every week, and they obviously have the fixtures. And I think I've spoke about this kind of at length, I think, on the pod, and it's that his fixture dovetail beautifully with Bournemouth. Mm-hmm. So if you do want to go down the route of kind of say Semenyo, you could have that Southampton and Leicester. But Everton then brings in Ipswich, Fulham, Southampton, and they play after that, because I know you're looking at that fixture ticker and saying it's good for Bournemouth for 2 and then it drops off. Mm-hmm. But you'll see that when we look at teams closer to the end of the pod, if you set up your team with a bit of a rotation and your squad maybe with a fuller kind of 15, it's possible to kind of cover those tougher fixtures. So I think Everton come on to play there, whether it's Calvert-Lewin or Dwight McNeil.
Yeah, no, I like it. And what about you, Hibbo? Obviously, you got teams that people are invested in there with like Brighton quite quite clearly at the bottom of the table there. Newcastle with Isak, who obviously hasn't been great to own recently either. And you're Chelsea, fourth from bottom. What do you think?
Was that for me, mate? Sorry.
Yes, for Nacho, yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, you mentioned about Chelsea with Cole Palmer as an investment for a game week 6 wildcard. Now, I look at those fixtures and actually think really only Liverpool's the one that is a little bit worrying. But with someone like a Cole Palmer, I do think if you're naturally going to wildcard him and you either look to pivot him out in game week 8 for another premium available to us if a fixture change happens, or you just hold him for the long term. But it's quite clear with the fixture ticker here and the form that Newcastle are in that if you own Newcastle, they are gone. Yeah. I know Harvey Barnes has been quite interesting. He's been ticking over really nicely, but I just don't really feel that confidence right now in a player like that. And in terms of Brighton, again, we're coming into a tricky run of fixtures right now that I think is probably worth avoiding, especially with the attacking options that they have available to them. So I think the teams that we're seeing at the bottom there, Newcastle, Brighton, Southampton, are definitely ones that I think we would be looking to avoid. Chelsea are probably a bit of an anomaly, but as I mentioned, I do have a little bit of caution about some minutes for attackers. And Bournemouth, we know for the next 2 are fantastic.
Yeah, and worth saying as well, you've got to make sure you're keeping an eye on Pedro news for Brighton. He was pictured playing FIFA with crutches behind his TV. I don't know who keeps crutches behind their TV, but it was seen, and we're seeing a lot of people saying he was on crutches to leave the game. Obviously, there's been lots of kind of minutes risk with him anyway, so it's worth keeping an eye on. I still think when he's fit, he's the best budget striker, but whether he's fit at the moment, we really don't know. So, worth keeping an eye on. So as the week goes on, make sure you're looking out for updates about him. Right. Let's have a look at the wildcard shortlist that I have made. So I have made this today. So these are the players that I am considering to be in my wildcard. Now, there is a lot of players on this list, and obviously I'm not going to have all these players on my wildcard, but the players that appear in bold are the players that I am majorly considering to pick. So I've organised this based on position, so goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, forwards, and I've also organised it based on budget. So if they're a budget player, then they're in the top of the table. If they're mid-price, they're in the middle, and if they're premium, they're at the bottom. I will tweet this out later, so if anybody wants this to be able to have on their phone, whatever you want to do with it, or if you just want to burn it or take the mickey out of it, whatever, you're more than welcome to. But this kind of helps see the kind of pool of players that you could potentially have in your wildcard. So, goalkeepers-wise, who I'm considering at the moment, and this is for anybody listening on the pod, budget-wise, we've got Sanchez, 4.6 million, Fabianski, 4 million, you need somebody on the bench, Sells for 4.5 million, and Flecken for 4.5 million, and it's Sanchez and Flecken that are being seriously considered. Mid-price, it's just Onana, and then premium, it's Raya, 5.6 million. Then defenders are so many cheap options. Mikolenko at 4.3, Mazraoui at 4.6, Greaves at 4, Aina at 4.5, who's in bold, Konsa 4.5 in bold, Colwill 4.5 in bold, Kirkes 4.5, Van der Berg 4 million in bold. He's only 4 million. Just a quick message on Van der Berg before I forget. We've only seen him in a 5 at the moment, so if they're playing an easier opposition in a 4, we don't know whether he's going to play, but you never know, he could do. Leif Davis, 4.5 million, Lewis, 4.7 million in bold, and Pinnock, 4.5. And then I've got nobody mid-priced. So I've got absolutely nobody defensive-wise that is around 5 million, 5.5 that I'm considering at the moment. But in premium, we got Gabriel at 6.1, who has turned into prime David Unsworth at the moment. TAA at 7.1 million, and then Saliba at 6 and Gvardiol at 6. Now, I'm not going to go onto the midfielders and forwards yet, because otherwise I'm just going to be naming players for 5 minutes. But looking at those goalkeepers and defenders, Hibbo, talk me through. Is there anything there that you're thinking, why haven't you picked this player? Or I would have this player in bold because I'm considering him.
Right, well, one quick point. You've got Fabianski named there as your 4 million goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that's if people go down the Raya and 4 route.
Yeah.
Now,
Basically.
there's 2 goalkeepers, Matthews of Crystal Palace and Virginia of Everton, that could drop to 3.9 before the deadline. Close.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to pocket that extra 0.1, that's a good thing. But no, I think in terms of the very cheap option, I'd be looking at Flecken. Mm-hmm. We were looking at the ticker, and he's Brentford are second for a good period of time at the top of the table on our ticker. So the danger with Brentford is that doesn't necessarily translate to clean sheets. Now, they look good in terms of the ticker, but if you're locked on to playing him every week, I think it's very different to go and say Raya as your locked goalkeeper and maybe Pinnock or Van den Berg as your fourth, if you know what I mean. Because with that option, you probably have 3 other better defenders, and you're maybe only using the Brentford defender on an emergency, if you know what I mean. So I don't mind it, but I don't know if I would want a Brentford defensive player playing for my team every week, if you know what I mean. My number one pick here is Raya, obviously, standout.
It's funny, isn't it? Because for me, I should have started the season with him, and I wanted to, but I didn't. So Raya's obviously there at 5.6 million. You know what you're getting. The fixtures are nice for 3 weeks. They're not so nice, but it does feel like a set and forget. But Sanchez has just appeared, Nacho. Like, he's the third or joint second highest scoring goalkeeper so far this season, with Onana, I think, is also second, and obviously Raya top. Have we still got that danger that one clanger from him and Jorgensen comes in? Or do you think it's just, this is Sanchez's job to lose, 4.6 million for a defence that looks like it's sorting itself out? Is he the way you would go?
Yeah, so Chelsea defensively are not offering anything in terms of physical defenders that Arsenal were, or fullbacks at Liverpool. So I don't really think there is any defender right now that you can look at and say to yourself, he is a big threat from set pieces, or he overlaps in the team in wide areas and contributes to assists. So Chelsea's defense is very, very 6 point or 2 points. So based on that, I don't think you're missing out necessarily on certain players, apart from maybe some bonus point accumulation. So I think Sanchez is actually a legitimate choice. I think he suits the way that Maresca plays, absolutely. The one thing I will say is anybody that's watched Sanchez will know he absolutely has a clanger in him at time to time. But I still think Maresca trusts the way, and I think the way that Chelsea are playing just expects some sort of problems to happen at some point, because it's very high-risk football in the way that they build up at times, inviting the pressure on. So mate, I actually think Sanchez is actually a pick that personally I can't have any confidence investing in Chelsea, because I still think there are a few issues defensively that need to be sorted out. But it is a different pick if you want to go a bit differential out there. I don't think many managers will do it.
Yeah, I've looked at it quite a few times, and obviously it's basically what you can do with that extra million if you move down from Raya, or that extra 0.5 if you go for another 4.5 keeper, whatever it is you want to do. Hibbo, you mentioned there Raya's your pick, easily your pick. Is that, if you were picking a goalkeeper, that is he the best goalkeeper pick, or is it you would pick him and a defender if you were going for double Arsenal defence, or would you be tempted to go for a Gabriel and a Saliba, or a Gabriel and a Ben White, even though he was benched this week? Is it that you would go for Raya no matter what on your wildcard?
I think both things are true. I think he's the best goalkeeper pick in the game. And I also think if I was doubling up on Arsenal, like let's be real about Arsenal. Like, they had 3 clean sheets over the first 5. And me specifically, I've been quite vocal on the pod about I was opposing Arsenal to a certain extent over this period of time. Saka's obviously performed over the 5 game weeks. The defence has obviously performed. And if you're looking at how well Gabriel does in the set piece situations, I think Raya's the cheapest route under that defence. Gabriel's a lock. I don't think I would touch Saliba personally.
Yeah.
It's just, and if we're looking at like even their shots and stuff like that, I think Gabriel over the first 5, he's had 5 shots in the box. They've all been headers. Saliba's had absolutely none. So he's very dominant, like if we're talking specifically about the defenders too.
Yeah, no, I just think it's so hard to go without him. And I did this last year. I didn't go with double defence, and I just regretted it every week. And it just seemed like such an easy cheat code play to go with double defence. And Raya's just sat there at 5.6. Like, I can remember FPL when you had 6 million keepers, and we're getting someone like Raya at 5.6 just seems like a bit of a bargain, which sounds funny because he's the most expensive, but it does just seem a bit of a bargain. And then you're looking at these defenders, which I've gone through already. There just seems to be so many cheap defenders you can invest in at the moment. And there's obviously some really good premium ones. But Nacho, when you're actually thinking about clean sheets, I found it really hard to pick teams and pick players. I thought, no, do you know what? I feel really confident they're going to keep quite a few clean sheets moving forward. There's not many, are there?
No, I absolutely agree. I think, like, looking at the list right now that we've spoken about, like, Mikalenko is offering brilliant value at 4.3 million. But can we sit here right now and say that this is a Sean Dyche Everton where we know we can get 10 to 12 clean sheets in a season. I just don't think we're seeing that come to fruition right now. I really think the absence of Onana is becoming evident in that Everton team. I do really like the look of Mazraoui at 4.6 million. I think he's a really nice pick for this Man United team where the fixtures do start to get a little bit better as we progress. But I'm seeing a lot of talk about Brentford obviously being picked up by a lot of managers. As we've mentioned, people like Collins or Pinnock at 4.5. But again, I know West Ham are woeful, but I don't look at Brentford at home against West Ham and think to myself, that is an absolute locked-in clean sheet personally. I still think Brentford have their problems. And I don't think West Ham are just suddenly a terrible team. I think they absolutely have the weapons available to hurt a team like Brentford. So I agree with you, mate. I think there aren't many clean sheets out there apart from the real big teams like an Arsenal, maybe even a Liverpool, for example. And that's why it does come back to it that maybe just go in quite safe and boring with the 5.6 million option at Raya and the Arsenal defender. It's just the route to go for. And then we spread it out with maybe another premium defender and then sprinkle it around with some 4.5s that you could just bring in 1 week at a time with the best fixture at home.
Yeah, I mean, he's not 4.5, he's 4.7, but Rico Lewis, Rodri's now injured for the season, which is horrendous for him. That's not nice. One of the best players in the league. Kyle Walker seems to be on a bit of a decline. This seems to be, already before that was happening, Lewis's kind of breakthrough season. 4.7 million. Would he be a lock for you?
Me?
For Nacho?
Okay.
I'm still treading carefully a little bit of Rico Lewis because I think we're coming into such a stage right now with Man City where it's quite hard to predict what direction Pep will take it. We know he loves to evolve the team and he's now been forced to take it in a different direction now with Rodri being out and of course Foden now coming back into the team. So I personally would like to actually have a bit more of a wait and see on Lewis. He's just played, I believe, quite a lot of minutes tonight in their game. I just think there's enough uncertainty right now to not really know exactly what he wants to do. I can't see him playing centre mid week in, week out. I think physically he isn't there to actually operate in a centre mid role. And I think even though Walker is having his issues, I think Pep still does look at him and think in the counter attack, he still gives me that, basically counter of the counter attack. So I like Lewis. I think he could be fantastic, but I personally am a little bit scared to go there.
Yeah. And Hibbo, talking about some premiums now then. Trent, 7.1 million. People are going to be needing to free up those funds at some point. Would you be going without Trent?
Definitely not. I think the fixtures have obviously tightened compared to how they were early season. Early season, they were really favourable. But now they're still okay. And if we look at the data tables, especially the XA one that we look at week to week, he's one of the few defenders that features and they provide some competition to the midfielders and the forwards. So he got his 11-point haul this week. And I think going forward, I'll definitely be keeping Trent because he feels like he's such good relative value compared to, say, the equivalent options in, say, midfield.
I find it hard. I found it hard to keep him doing my wildcard drafts because it's all the midfielders I want. And as soon as you move him down to a 4.5 and you free up 2.5, it just seems ridiculous being able to do that. But at the same time, like you said, he's obviously looked very, very good this year. He's up there with all his underlying stats like he usually is. Are you 100% you're keeping him?
100%. And you're talking about cheat code defence and you're talking about, say, Raya, Gabriel, say Trent, make those three part of your 4-man defence, say, for example.
It's a lot.
And it's a lot, but what I think that you could do there is I think you could throw Rico Lewis on the mix.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about where we find these clean sheets. Man City, their clean sheet percentages are great from now for the foreseeable future. And I think they have a lot of games on a Saturday, Man City.
Yeah.
Saturday games, we're more likely to get a leak than we are at any other time. We saw at the start of the season when Rodri wasn't on the team, he played as kind of like a controller, inverted, but a midfield control. Has he nailed? No, I don't think we can say he's nailed. Does he need to be nailed at 4.7 million at Man City? I don't think so either. Because I think if we can combine having a wee bit of depth in your 4th and 5th defenders with a wee bit of risk and Lewis, I don't mind it at all. I think a defensive like Raya, Gabriel, Lewis, and Trent is just rock solid. Amazing.
I mean, that's quite a nice segue there. If you're spending that much in your defence, Midfielders, you've got a lot of cheap options that have come out and have done really well already, and their underlying stats are looking good. So on this list, we got Smith Rowe at 5.8 million. Rogers, who we've spoken about already tonight, 5.2 million. He's in bold. Remember, bold means that I am seriously considering them. Semenyo at 5.6 million. He's in bold. Dibbling at 4.5 million. 4.5 million midfielder that's playing, and he scored this weekend as well. McNeil at 5.4 million, and then Carvalho at 4.8 million, which is a bit of an interesting one with their fixtures, but it looks like he could come into that team quite soon. Mid-price, we got Diaz at 7.9, Maddison at 7.5, who I think has had a great start to the season, and Boomer at 7.2 million, who is in bold, who, if I could have in triple bold, I would. Eze at 6.9, and then Bruno at 8.3, with Saka, Palmer and Salah as the premiums, and I've got Saka and Palmer at the moment in bold, but not Salah. Now, we're looking at those midfielders there. Let's just start with the budget ones. Smith Rowe, Rogers, Semenyo, Dibbling, McNeil, Carvalho. Nacho, if I go to you first, pick two of those. Who would you go with?
Pick two, it would be Rogers and Semenyo.
Yeah, easy? No McNeil?
Yeah, I just can't get excited about McNeil personally. I think
it's the name, isn't it? If he was McNeilio, everybody would be everywhere all over him, wouldn't they? McNeilinho. No, terrible.
I love that. Yeah, I think McNeil is just it's just not for me. I just can't get excited about that, even though he does offer some creativity in the Everton team. Carvalho, I need to see a bit of certainty about minutes. Dibbling, it sounds cool, but I just don't really, again, love it. Smith Rowe will be very close, but just looking at the other two, cheaper, better fixtures, I would argue. I just think they are just about the best picks for a wildcard out of the bunch we've mentioned.
Yeah. And then Hibbo, mid-price, Diaz, Maddison and Bumo, Eze, Bruno. I think that's a harder lot to choose from because, let's be honest, you're probably picking one, maybe two. But if you're going with that massive defence, you're probably only be able to pick one of these if you've also got another premium in there. So which one are you going for, do you think? Or are you going to tell me you can get two?
You could maybe get two, but one of them couldn't be Bruno or Diaz.
Yeah.
I like Mbumo here.
Yeah.
I think he's a standout. We know he plays up front. We had the conversation last week. How do we think he's going to be effective without Johan Wissa in the team? He went out and scored. He's still on pens. So I think when we're looking at that fixture run, there's nothing to fear. His price point's very, very friendly. Eze is still, he's kind of dropped down in price a bit. So I think he's an interesting one at 6.9. I think the immediate fixtures don't exactly scream investment for me because he's got a couple of ways and he's got Liverpool. They pick up in a few game weeks' time, so maybe Eze wouldn't be somebody I would go for in a wild card. The Bruno one is interesting because I know there's a lot of kind of Bruno fans out there in the community. He's been hugely underperforming, and I think that I think his price is restrictive and it restricts what else that you can do. But no, for me, definitely Bumo and maybe Eze in this mix here.
Yeah. Maddison's one as well. You didn't mention Diaz there. Diaz has obviously been killing it. We mentioned him before in the stream. Maddison is at a great start of the season. He's done this before where, he started the season, the first 6 games, and then he got injured. He was averaging over 6 points a game. So he's got it in him. I think that mid bracket, like you said, I think Mbumo's a lock. I think you've got to have Mbumo with those fixtures, and I think he's getting into that essential bracket in terms of the fixtures coming up and what he brings to the team. Nacho, if you had to pick one other from those four, so Diaz, Maddison, Eze, Bruno, where would you be going?
Yeah, I think going back to it, I still would go for Luis Diaz. I just think Maddison is actually going under the radar massively. I think he's fantastic. But again, the numbers that Luis Diaz is putting up right now is just ridiculous. And when I think about a team, I just think Liverpool is one of those that can accumulate as a team over 2xG pretty consistently each and every week. Bruno Fernandes, I think he's fine. But again, I just think without penalties, I just can't really trust him, to be honest with you. Eze, obviously the talisman in that Crystal Palace team. But with the introduction of Nketiah, I just want to see a little bit more whether that impacts him in terms of bonus points and stuff. So I think it comes back to Luis Diaz in my eyes. I think he's still one of the best picks at that price.
Yeah, interesting. And then last one, premium Hibbo, Saka, Palmer, Salah. Are you going to be moving Salah down to afford Saka and Palmer? Do you think you should be owning Saka and Palmer? What are you thinking?
It's It's an interesting consideration. We'll see it whenever I look at my team, but I'm definitely going Salah down to, at the very least, Saka.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're looking at these immediate fixtures for Arsenal, and they are pretty ridiculous. You know, they've got Leicester at home, Southampton at home, and Bournemouth away, which is slightly tighter. Then the fixtures get a wee bit tighter then with Liverpool, Newcastle, and Chelsea. But these kind of two immediate fixtures, they would be forecast to score close to 3 goals in each game. So I would feel fairly confident in backing Saka and those. In terms of Palmer, Brighton at home and Forest at home, they're good games, but what I would say is they're both kind of established Premier League teams. Then after that, it's Liverpool away, Newcastle at home, United away, Arsenal at home. I think that's quite a testing run for Palmer. So what you're doing if you buy Palmer, I think, is you're saying I'm going to have him for 2 game weeks and then I'm going to move him on.
Yeah.
So you're effectively pre-booking a transfer. And I think in my position where post Wildcard I'll have 3 transfers, it's okay to do that in some cases, but you don't want to do it too much, if you know what I mean. You don't want to be like pre-booking 2 and 3 transfers because it'll just get very messy very quickly.
Yeah, I just keep looking at Palmer and thinking I want him. I just don't, especially with him on pens. There's just so little players out there. I think they can really bang for you one week. And Palmer's already did it against Wolves, didn't he? You know, was it 4 assists and a goal, whatever, something silly? And I just look at him and think there's not many players that can do that for you. And I'm looking at Palmer, like you said, with those next 2 fixtures, but after that, it's not looking quite so rosy. And the idea would be to get Palmer in for 2 weeks. I think that would be the plan with him. Whereas Saka's obviously a little bit longer, but
I could do that. Like, this is kind of spoiler alert before we get to my team. But like at the moment, my team, I've got Foden.
Yeah.
Like Foden's obviously completely fraught with risk at the minute. We don't really know what's going on with Foden. He's hardly played any minutes so far. He's played like a 45. He's played like a 20. Part of it for me was thinking, if I found out closer to Saturday, because they're the early kickoff, if I found out that Foden was starting, I might gamble because they've got 3 great fixtures after Newcastle. But older people that are maybe considering that route might think, I'll go Palmer and I'll jump off. Because you get 6 and you get 7, and then you can jump the potentially Foden then from 8 and 9, where he's coming on the Southampton then. So that could be a way that I go if I don't feel the trust in Foden, which, let's be real, it's probably not really there.
Yeah. Speaking of trust, we've got some budget forwards here as well. So we've got Duran at 6.1, who is unbelievable at the moment. He's like prime Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, coming off the bench constantly and scoring goals. So Duran at 6.1 million in the budget forward bracket. We got Chris Wood, who's had a fantastic start of the season at 6.1 million. DCL at 6 million. Pedro at 5.6. We've already mentioned the worries about him. And Dye at 5.4 million, who I used to love picking in my gaffer team for the Championship Fantasy Football. And then Evanilson as well at 5.9 million. Nacho, looking at these budget forwards, they're going to start being popular because people's budgets are going to be stretched and they're going to need that budget striker, you would have thought. Have you got a preference here amongst those 6? Because they've all had varying starts to the season. Some have been very good, like I said, like Wood. Where would you be going?
Yeah, I think the 2 that stand out for me are going to be Wood and DC and Calvert-Lewin. I think Duran's fantastic, but nobody can take a punt on him right now until we actually see him lined up alongside Watkins in a Villa team week in, week out. And Pedro, with those Brighton fixtures coming up, Chelsea, Spurs, Newcastle, Liverpool, Man City, it's bad long term. So I think for me, I can look past João Pedro and Brighton assets. So I think it comes down to it, Wood versus Calvert-Lewin. And I think I'm still in the favour of Chris Wood. I think he started the season so well. We know the data was there from last season as well. So it isn't just a flash in the pan of 5 game weeks. He actually was doing this at the start, at the back end of last season as well. On penalties, it looks like. Now, obviously, Gibbs White has the red card, so it's another week of him guaranteeing himself on penalties. And I think the fixtures are absolutely fine long term. So even though Calvert-Lewin is ticking over really nicely, I still have a bit more of a preference on Chris Wood myself.
Yeah, and it's interesting that's the 3rd striker spot potentially. And Hibbo, that 2nd striker spot, I think is one of the hardest on the wild card, or even if you're trying to look to see who to move from Isak onto, I think it's quite tricky. So on here, I've got Jackson, who's in bold at 7.7 million, Havertz at 8.1, who's also in bold, Solanke at 7.5, Mateta at 7.4, Cunha at 6.5, because after a while, their fixtures do turn quite nice. I've got Watkins in the premium bracket, but I'm just going to chuck him in this mid-price one because we're talking about second strikers. Where's your head at with these mid-price strikers and maybe getting that second striker? Because I'm seeing, we've already spoken a bit about Jackson. You've got Solanke there, Havertz, Mateta, all those players, Watkins, like we just said. I think they're all good options, but you can obviously only pick one potentially, unless you're going balls to the wall and going for three big strikers. Which way would you be going?
It's an interesting question because we've spoke about this last week and we talked about, say, Havertz, and we talked about would you potentially go for, say, double Arsenal attack or double Arsenal defence, and I was kind of bullish at that point, talking about potentially going double Arsenal attack. I do like Havertz as a pick, and I do like those next two fixtures, but on my head I thought to myself, look, well, long term, what's the best play? Mm-hmm. Like if I asked you long term what 3 Arsenal players you would want, you would tell me double defence and Saka.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I decide to go down the Havertz route, I'm doing it for 3 game weeks, and then I'm pre-booking transfer. So this brings me back to the Palmer debate. So if I go Palmer and I go Havertz, I'm starting to pre-book too many transfers. So I think if you're looking to kind of squeeze Haaland and Saka and maybe like a Palmer, I'm maybe not shopping too much in that mid-price bracket. If I was to pick one, and if you're going to throw Watkins on there, he's an option as opposed to, say, like a Palmer maybe. Mm-hmm. Treat him as like your next premium, and that could work okay. But I think Mateta was withdrawn very early against Man United. Cunha, I wouldn't touch. Solanke, I don't like the next 2 for Spurs. Brighton away, Man United away. I don't really see what the whole Spurs rush is there. I think you could nearly avoid this price point and go for 2 cheaps and Haaland, or you could maybe go a cheap Watkins and Haaland.
I'm not sure about going the 2 cheaps. I like having that price point. Like, I like the idea of maybe having, say, a Jackson and then after 2 weeks moving to Solanke. Like we were just talking about with Palmer, have him for 2 weeks and then move off him kind of thing. But like you just said, if you start with Jackson and Palmer and after 2 weeks you then got them for a bad fixture run, that seems quite, I don't know, not as optimal as maybe it could be, which I won't mention too much because you might see that in my team in a second. And then the last player here is Haaland. 15.3 million. I mean, enough said. Is there any chance anybody's going to be going without him, Nacho?
No, I have seen people in the community go without him, and I absolutely love it. And I definitely think there is a strategy to do so. But I know it's crazy. I'm not going to say it's crazy, but I'm just going to say, like, I'm looking at City's fixtures coming up right now with Newcastle away. Like, let's be real, like, Newcastle have not been great at all. So that could be a captainable fixture. And then Fulham, Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth. The fixtures just get better and better. The guy's a machine. He's throwing balls at people. He's arguing with managers. I just love it. I love this version of Haaland. So I'm all in on Haaland.
I did feel like when you were giving it the big one about your big score this week, to tell you to be humble. Be humble, yeah?
Be humble. Oh, you should have done
that. Yeah. Right, here we go. Let's look at some wildcard drafts. So this is my draft at the moment. So this is Raya in goal. This is FPL team, by the way. Make sure you use it. Raya in goal. I've got Gabriel, Colwill and Leif Davis at the back with Mbumo, Rodgers, Saka, Palmer and Semenyo in the middle with Haaland and Nicholas Jackson up top. I got Fabianski on the bench, which if Hibbo's correct and someone drops to 3.9, I could quickly move to them. And Dye, who is my third striker at the moment, with Vandenberg and Lewis also there on the bench. Now, my biggest things at the moment, I'm pretty sure Ryan and Gabriel are locked, and Mbumo's locked, Saka's locked, Semenyo I'm pretty sure is locked in there, and obviously so is Haaland. Larico Lewis, I'd be shocked if I didn't go with him. I just feel like the chance to go for a City defender at that price is something you've got to take. I'm still unconvinced whether it's Rodgers I want to go for or whether I want to go somewhere else, but I think Rodgers at his price just is silly to turn that down. And then it's kind of those defenders. I've got Colwill, I've got Davis, I've toyed with Kirkes, someone like that. You've got Conser, all those players that could be really good that are quite cheap still anyway. And then it's Palmer. He's the biggest one is whether I do still go with Palmer. I keep wanting to get Palmer in, and I almost got him in instead of Salah 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I think I'm getting him in based on the fact that he is a great player and he's looking good in a team that's starting to gel a little bit. I'm not feeling thrilled about having Palmer and Jackson together, although I know I should be treating them separately. But I'm just looking at Palmer and thinking I could move him down, and I could move him down to whoever it is, 7.5 to 8 million player, and then I could free up some funds elsewhere. The other biggest thing I should say about this is there's no Trent. So I'm basically having Palmer instead of Trent, which is obviously a big thing too, unless I move Jackson down to a cheaper striker. So there are a few little things that I've still got to work out here, but this is kind of where I am at the moment. I did an awful lot of moves on my wildcard on Saturday night and got a lot of price rises. So I'm looking fine in terms of prices, and I can afford players at cheaper than they are now. So that's good. But yeah, this is kind of where I am at the moment. But feel free to just chuck some things in, guys. What do you think?
I'd be a bit concerned about your team and
Let
me check here. Game week 8. Because if I'm looking there, you've got Jackson, you've got Palmer, you've got Semenyo.
It's Liverpool, isn't it? Is that how they play?
The fixture.
Yeah.
Well,
Chelsea,
the two
Liverpool,
Chelsea
yeah.
boys are away to Liverpool, and Semenyo plays Arsenal.
Yeah.
So I'd be a wee bit kind of concerned. That's what I was talking about committing to the double Chelsea.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Well, this is triple.
And this is triple. And by not the thing about squeezing in for me, Palmer, Saka, and Haaland, is it sacrifices a wee bit on the bench where you'd be able to provide yourself a wee bit of buffer and a wee bit of rotation. That would be my only kind of constructive thing. But look, having the 3 big hitters is nice too. Like.
Well, the thing is, like, obviously I can move Palmer down, but if I move Palmer down, I've got to get Trent in, I think, because I've got to have Trent in there then as well. And obviously I've already got Trent at the moment, so I'm locked into the price. That's all fine. But if I then do that, I'm using up the funds, and I've got to obviously then move Palmer to somebody in midfield that I want that's in there. I can easily move him to Smith Rowe and McNeil, whatever it is. But then it's surprising how quickly those funds go, because obviously you're stretching them to their limit. And Haaland, obviously being as expensive as he is, it doesn't help. But yeah, I'm just toying around with the ideas. I mean, if I do that, then I've got Trent, Gabriel and Raya in the back, which is what you were discussing earlier anyway. But yeah, like I said, it's where I am at the moment. I'm unconvinced with having Palmer and Jackson, although I do like the idea of Jackson. It's just, yeah, after these 2 weeks, I'm not a massive fan of having all three. Colwell I can bench easily, but yeah, it's kind of where I am. I mean, Hibbo, you've mentioned already about your Raya, Gabriel, Trent. This is your draft. Slightly different to mine, which is actually quite nice to see, because I think a lot of people are worried that there's going to be a wildcard template. But yeah, you've got some differences.
Yeah, so just to kind of go through my team from back to front. So I've got Raya and Fabianski as the 2 goalkeepers. Then I've got Gabriel, Lewis, Greaves, who's a 4 million defender that plays a bit. Trent, Nathan Collins of Brentford. I've got in midfield then Saka, Rogers, Bumo, Foden, who's a bit of a wildcard pick, Semenyo, Wood, Calvert-Lewin and Haaland. Now look, this is kind of far from a finished article. Why am I a wildcarding? Number one, I didn't have any Arsenal. So they've obviously performed very well over the 5 fixtures. We made the bet against them, but look, now's the time to say, look, come on back on Arsenal players. You've got Leicester, Southampton. We're going to apologise. In terms of City, I'm really, really keen on the City fixtures. And if I'm looking, I only have Haaland. So I also have quite a lot of Fulham players and Brighton players, and their shelf life had kind of run out. So looking at this team, my locked players are basically Gabriel, Trent, Saka, Rogers, Bumo, I think Semenyo and Haaland, which is kind of a strong core. I still have a few decisions to make. I could go the double Arsenal attack. And I know we've had that discussion already. But Man City is a big one for me, because from like kind of game week 7 to game week 9, they're projected to score a lot of goals. I think as Callum said, they play Fulham at home, Wolves away, and Southampton at home, which is a very easy fixture run. And I don't think Haaland on his own is going to cut it. So that's why I put Foden in there. He also maybe works as a bit of a placeholder for Palmer for me. I have to obviously free up some extra funds elsewhere. But I think we could get word that either or both Foden or Rico Lewis start against Newcastle on Saturday. So that's kind of the idea. Could I jump on a very low-owned player before he begins this kind of fixture run? Because everybody's basically saying, oh, well, I'll buy him in 2 or 3 weeks' time. I'm thinking, could I get there early? I'm also maybe exposing myself to a bit of risk because maybe I don't have to go early. So no, that's kind of my thought process at the moment. I'm going to have a few free transfers after Wildcard, and I think it feels kind of solid. It feels kind of robust, and I feel like it won't age pretty badly. And like, say for example, Semenyo, I feel like I can bring him out for say Calvert-Lewin. Whenever the Semenyo fixtures start to get tough, and I think also my defenders, this is what I talked about. I can try and play Lewis as my third, but if it doesn't work, I can kind of default to Collins, if you know what I mean.
Have you got three free transfers after your wildcard?
After Wildcard,
you ought to mention that more, mate.
I'm 100k overall as well.
Oh, here it is. Christ. After two red arrows as well. Disgusting. God, I think that's nice. Somebody in the chat actually has said, Facts has said, Hibbo's is perfect. So there you go. I think he's talking about the wild card.
Foden's not perfect. Foden's definitely not perfect, but that, I think you understand me thinking there. I might go there, I might not go there. He could be Palmer. Let's see. I know,
and obviously the massive difference this year is obviously that you can bank those free transfers. So where I'm looking and thinking, look at those two cheaper strikers, that's going to cause trouble later. It doesn't really, because you could have 4 free transfers and you can quickly swap 2 of them around quite easily, couldn't you? So actually a lot of that being inflexible is no longer being inflexible because you're going to use your wildcard and you could have 4 free transfers in 2 weeks' time. So I think that's fine. I think it looks good.
I think a lot of people are talking, like even I saw some discussion on Twitter earlier today, and people are talking about, say, Semenyo, and they're saying, but he's only really a good pick for 2 weeks and then the fixtures fall off. But like this kind of the point. You're buying him to try and hit the jackpot against Southampton at a time when nobody really owns him. And having that bit of rotation on there where you can bury him, you maybe have transfers banked up. Do you have to sell him straight away? Maybe not necessarily. So, no, I think that's the play. This might change slightly, but I think not very much. Most of it's locked.
Yeah. Nacho, I did dramatically bring your draft up, and I thought you were going to start talking, but Hibbo just carried on talking about his rank and his 3 free transfers. So hang on, I'm going to do it for you again. I'm going to go back to Hibbo's one. And Nacho, here is your... No, hang on.
I was just trying to do the manager thing, the Benitez, where he unveils the team.
Nacho, here's your team.
Okay, so my team's kind of similar to what's been spoken about. It is. In general, I think there's a lot of template players here that, to be honest with you, as we've been doing this whole thing, have kind of justified the picks that we've gone for. Now, of course, I'm in a slightly unique position here. I'm going to say not a stupid position because obviously I haven't activated my wild card yet. So I know, as I mentioned, so I probably should give some little bit of context on this here. So
the reason
I know, well, I'm trying to convince myself that I'm playing like 4D chess, but I feel like I'm not at all. I feel like I'm just trying to be a little bit different for the sake of being different. But the team that I've built here, the wildcard, is in mind of that. I am moving away from the team that I currently have. So I currently have double Liverpool in the shape of Robertson and Trent. I have Jota, but he isn't really a playable option anymore. And I have someone like a Watkins. So I'm not going to wildcard personally and keep those players in my team, I don't think, because otherwise I start to ask myself, what is the purpose of actually wildcarding? Because I still have people like Bukayo Saka in my team already and Rodgers and all. So I thought about that a little bit when I was building this wildcard team. Double Arsenal defence, we mentioned. The more I think about it, I do like the idea of Havertz as the number 9, because I think there are going to be goals in these next 2 fixtures. And really, I know Gabriel is a machine from set pieces, but he isn't going to score every single week. So we could very easily see minimal saves from Raya, 6-pointer from Gabriel, 6-pointer from Raya, and we could see the huge double digits from actually the attacking players. My one concern, of course, Trossard being sent off, issues in the Arsenal team, where is Havertz actually going to play, and the impact of the team with Sterling and stuff. So just to go through my team for people listening, Raya, Fabianski, pretty default. Gabriel Aina, I do like as a bit of a long-term pick in that Nottingham Forest defence, who Nuno has got really working hard defensively. Greaves at 4 million, Collins is my Brentford coverage, and Pedro Porro, who we haven't really spoke about that much. I'm a little bit concerned about the introduction of what they've done in the last game with Maddison and Kulusevski as central areas. I think we might not see Porro invert as much. We might not see as much attacking threat from him, but right now I do think he is a nice pickup long-term. And the midfield, pretty default. Saka, Mbeumo, Rodgers, Palmer, Semenyo, and then Calvert-Lewin, Wood and Haaland. So I do like this team. But again, as a manager right now that has double Liverpool, I don't look at this and think, oh my God, I have to wildcard into this team. And that's the sort of interesting thing I've got right now, considering I haven't activated it.
Yeah, I mean, both of you two having Wood live tonight. I thought this was an OnlyFans stream for a second. Disgusting. I haven't gone anywhere near Wood, but you two are both very, very keen, which is interesting. Yeah, I know. Let's have a little bit of a look at the community team. I hate to do it, but we do have to bring them up. We've got, not that I hate what you're doing, just the fact you're doing well. Henderson with 9 points, Robinson with 2, Gavardio with 1, Trent with 11, Rodgers 10, Salah 12 as their captain, Smith Rowe 8, Minter 1, Pedro 1. So they got a bit badly there with the Brighton rotation. Solanke with 6 and Haaland with 9. So they had 70 points. They had a 500k green arrow up to 1.4 million. So they are breathing down my neck, but they're still losing to all of us at the moment. So unlucky, guys, unlucky. They activated their wildcard on Sunday. So I'm assuming they missed all the price changes that happened, which was over Saturday night. So hopefully they can't afford who they want. So fingers crossed. But no, so 1.4 million. Better luck next year, guys. Hope you're all infighting and can't decide on anything. Picking a wild card in a community team is not the easiest. So good luck to Matt, who also had a very, very good week this week. And he did want me to say, and do you know what? He did have such a good week that I will mention it. And he's such a good lad for doing this every week for us. He got 84 points this week. And had a 1.4 million green arrow. So fair play to him. He's up to 700k now. So well done, Matt. You're an absolute legend for doing this for us every week. So thank you very much. Right. Here we go then. Let's have a little bit of a Q&A to finish off. I hope you've enjoyed our wildcard stream tonight. Hopefully there's lots of information for all of you as well. But obviously it was a kind of focused on wildcard because 2 of us are wildcarding and 1 of us is an absolute amateur. So let's let's have some questions. So chuck in your questions, as many as you like. We've got about 5 minutes and we'll try and answer as many of them for you as possible. Let's have a look. I'm trying to see if there's any before. Let's have a look. Can't see too many. Although Andy Martin said, I left a sock round his on Saturday. Saw him on Saturday in Bournemouth. Went to the arcades. He was there. Gave me some free plays. Yeah, bless him. He's lovely. Lennox says, with 2 free transfers, I'm at 150k with pretty much most of the template wildcard team. If I save, would you suggest 12 is the best wildcard window? So Hibbo, if you weren't wildcarding now, would you go in? I mean, I've looked. I would say 8 or 12, but do you would say one of those, or would you say another time?
Well, I would say if Lennox thinks he's fairly well set now and he has a few free transfers, he probably doesn't need the wildcard, mate, if you know what I mean. So I think logic would suggest that 12 is probably the next best window for him.
Yeah. Nacho, Kaja says, should I sell Gavardio for Gabriel for a hit before he drops in price, or should I just keep him?
Oh, I don't love it for a hit. Now, we're not seeing the Vardy of what we saw last season with him basically playing as a left winger, so it is worth noting on that. But straight away, game week 7 onwards, I think you were looking at it thinking you want a piece of that Man City defence at some point. So if it was a free transfer, I probably would say go for it because there's just a real fear of the ownership of the Arsenal defence. But for a -4, I'm just not as inclined for it because I think he will have his flowers in future game weeks.
Yeah. Attaboy says, not on wildcard, I want to get rid of Jota. Who should I go for, Hibbo?
Oof.
Easy
Boomo?
answer, sure. Yeah.
Brian Boomo?
Got to get the boom in.
We don't even have to justify that, do we? We just straight up answer.
Easy. Belfast Bunch says, would you guys ditch João Pedro for Wood for a -4, Nacho?
Only if it comes out that the picture that we saw with Crutches is true and your squad can't actually accommodate him being just on your bench for that 1 week. If your team's in tatters, then yes, but only if he's confirmed out and you don't have a strong bench.
Yeah.
It was a terrible tackle by Gibbs White, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm blaming you for that, Andy. It was terrible.
Blame me. I didn't want him to get sent off. Luke says, what are your thoughts on Ndai, Hibbo?
I didn't actually know who Ndai was until we did the stream.
Stop it. Gaffer
Who is he?
legend.
Like, who does he? Oh, sorry, who does he play for?
He used to play for Sheffield United, but he plays for Everton now.
Yeah.
He went to Marseille,
France,
didn't he?
Or, yeah.
Well, I don't know anything about him, so I can't recommend him. Like, and in the context of the cheap value picks that we have, I think in attack, I probably wouldn't go for him. If you're going Everton, go for DCL.
Michael Scott says no love for Mavididi at 5.3 million over Rodgers. 17 points in the last 2 on penalties when Vardy's off the pitch, and from week 7, Leicester have some decent fixtures. What's your thoughts, Nacho, on Steffi Mavididi?
Who's that guy? No, joking. I think I do like that player. I've seen it do a little bit of the rounds on Twitter recently, and not someone that I'm looking at right now, but looks like he has been integrated into that Leicester team. Could be a good punt, but I still prefer Rodgers.
Can I just say, last week we got asked who the punt of the week was, and Vardy kept getting brought up. And who did I say? I said Mavididi.
Oh.
First win of the season. First win of the season after 6 weeks.
Big.
Greg Frost says, do you think Carvalho starts this weekend, Hibbo?
There's too much doubt. I just, and if I feel that way about the player, like, can you really invest in him? I would suggest not. So I know people are talking him up potentially as a cheap price point, 4.8, but there's value at Rodgers' point and there's value at McNeil's. What's the point?
What's the point?
And do you really want double Brentford attack? Because I think Callum made a great point earlier about Liverpool or whoever potentially getting 2 XG a game or predicted for it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be predicting Brentford for enough XG to double up on attack. So, no, I wouldn't really be for me.
No,
doubling, you could just go cheap and go doubling.
I'm just going to go back. We've had a super chat, and we did get one earlier from Victor B for £5 saying just to say hello. Thank you, Victor B.
Hey,
hello.
Hey, Victor.
Yeah. Hey. Move with Mike has also done a super chat for £5 saying, I'm going for a wild card and I just built my team, but in my tired state, I forgot to click the button, so taking a -24. Can I reverse this? Yes, you can. As soon as you press your wild card, it will get rid of all the hits, mate. Don't worry. I'm assuming it also gives you back your free transfers you had if you had more than one. I'm guessing
It does, but there's been like scare stories on Twitter where like people have been saying that it doesn't, and it will. It'll 100% give you back your free transfers next week. Well, it better because I have 3, so I'm expecting to see them.
Yeah, just make sure you hit your wild card before the deadline. By the way, just make sure you do that. Right, 2 more questions. Let's have a look. Where was the? Oh, FPL Mackham says, would you go dibbling to have Diaz, Jackson, and Solanke, Nacho? I was going to ask Hibbo, but he probably's never heard of dibbling.
Wait, what's the question? Who's it from?
Dibbling.
Who's it from?
Vikarov.
Mate, what's the question again? Can you repeat it?
It was. Would you? It's from FPL Mackham saying, would you go dibbling to have Diaz, Jackson, and Solanke?
Oh, would I do that move, dibbling? I think he's a good enabler, but he has to be your fifth pick. Like you cannot be relying on him each and every week.
Good shout.
Yeah. And last one from Joseph Robinson saying, thoughts on Lewis playing in Carabao tonight? So Newcastle, what do you think, Hibbo? Was Lewis fine for the weekend?
I just generally wouldn't worry about players playing on a Tuesday night that are also going to play on a Saturday.
Yeah.
I don't really get that as like a big turnaround, especially for a player that's 19, 20. It's no big deal. Foden played, Grealish played. Man City historically go fairly strong in the Carabao Cup. Or the EFL Cup, as it was at one point. Yeah. So, no, I wouldn't worry about it at all. Watch team news on Saturday, and hopefully we get a league.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Right, thanks so much for your questions, guys, and also thank you so much for the people that joined us tonight. I think we had over 700 people here listening at one point, so thank you so much. As I said, I will post that wildcard shortlist on Twitter as well if you'd like to see that. Thank you so much for all the guys that are listening after the fact, and also for the people listening on the pod. We do appreciate each and every one of you. Hibbo, thanks so much for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
It's been a pleasure as always, mate.
Good man. And Nacho, happiest I've ever seen you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
No, it's a pleasure, mate. It's always easier when you have a green arrow, isn't it? So, yeah pleasure.
I would love to have had a green arrow, but Tom's going to have some tough words from me tonight. Thank you so much, everybody. We hope your arrows are green moving into the game week. And if you're on Wildcard, good luck. If you're not on Wildcard, we hope you crash and fail. Thank you so much, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.